You're listening to the Health Courage Collective podcast, episode 31, Your Hormonal Advantages on Different Days of the Month, part 1. Welcome to the Health Courage Collective podcast, the show for women who are too busy to slog through hours of generalized, inapplicable, and often contradictory health information, but too smart to ignore that a few minutes of focused attention now can prevent years of suffering in the future. I'm your host, Christina Hackett, a pharmacist who doesn't want you to live on prescriptions, a certified coach specifically trained to maximize your potential, and a compulsive learner obsessed with preventative, cutting-edge, holistic, and integrative medicine. I'm on a mission to increase your physical and mental resilience so you can fearlessly look forward to your next 40-plus limitless years. Your time is now. Let's go. Welcome back to the podcast, my friend. I'm so glad you're here. 2022 is just zooming by. We're already into February. I hope you've been doing well. How has your brainwashing been going? Did you join a cult? Just kidding. Are you making an effort to give your brain more deep cleaning opportunities? The glymphatic system is awesome. Today we're going to talk about your hormones. I have a lot to say about a lot of hormones, so to keep these two episodes under control, we're just going to talk about how female sex hormones change throughout the month and why it matters to you. Depending on what stage of life you're in and what other health conditions you might be dealing with, you might not have a regular 28-day menstrual cycle right now. I still think it's worth your time to understand the 28-day nature of a regular cycle and how, for women, nothing stays the same every single day. And it's not supposed to. Once you have a clear understanding of the ebb and flow of natural changes throughout the month and how to use them to your advantage, you can decide what you want to do with that information. You might decide to work with the powers of being in tune with your hormones until your cycles stop and then move on. Or you might decide to tap into the amazing benefits of taking bioidentical hormones as a replacement once your hormone levels drop off at menopause. There are so many good things that can easily be done to keep your physiology young and healthy, so keep your options and your mind open, but it's not something you need to decide today. Right now, we're just going to understand what is going on as the month progresses and see how you can tap into the surprising power of acting in harmony with what is happening with your hormones. Even at later stages in life, when our hormones aren't changing much, we still may not want every single day to be exactly the same. Most of this information comes from a book written by Alisa Vitti called In the Flow. It's a great book, so if you like this stuff and get to the end of this episode wanting more, I would recommend that you get her book. I'll put the name of the book in the show notes. She also has an app, and I'll put a link to that in the show notes. The book is super helpful and packed with so much good information. I don't have any girls, but I think it would be such a good thing for girls to learn when they're young. Maybe even a requirement. Maybe. I feel like the author is a little heavy-handed with the patriarchy-bashing anti-male agenda. I do absolutely believe what she says about it, but I don't think that most men in the world are purposefully trying to stifle women by creating systems and environments that cater to people whose hormones stay pretty much the same every day. I think it's more of an ignorance problem. And she does actually have some good information for men who want to understand the women in their lives better, and it's pretty sweet if men want to know what's going on and how they can be less confused and help play a supporting role. They may never understand why we wear high heels even though they hurt our feet, how a shopping trip doesn't necessarily mean buying anything, or the level of skill mastery it takes to put on eye makeup in a moving vehicle. But they can understand some basics of how our physiology changes and how we behave throughout the month. Alisa Vitti begins chapter 1 of her book talking about the language used in her biology textbook when she was 14. It might be a little exaggerated, but it proves her point. To quote from her book, In the Flow, she says, "The language was potent. It read something like, the testes are powerhouses of efficient production. They produce 200 to 300 million spermatozoa daily. Each sperm itself is a perfect delivery system for genetic material to the egg, the shape, the tail, the nutrients that give the sperm its motility and mobility, all in perfect concert for its ultimate goal, getting to the egg first to share genes." Wow, nature is brilliant by design. I moved on to the section about women's reproduction. I couldn't wait. But what I got was something like this. After the development and release of one egg from the ovary, the female reproductive process is twofold. In the case of conception, the lining thickens, the uterus grows, the placenta forms, and the miracle of life begins in the safe confines of the womb. If not, then the lining sheds and is lost, and the cycle begins again. That's it, I thought. I was struck by the change in tone, the light treatment of the process, and the glossing over of the major things we do. You know, bleed and not die, and oh yeah, 3D print tiny humans. No biggie. End quote. She goes on to write her own description of what she wishes 14-year-old girls would read in their textbooks. Here it is. Quote, "The female reproductive system is the crowning achievement of human evolution and reproduction. Efficient and highly adaptable 7 hormones work in symphonic relationship to cause 4 highly refined processes to take place in a given monthly cycle. The development of multiple follicles, ovulation, the building of the lining of the uterus to prepare for possible conception, and the release of that lining when conception does not occur. When conception does occur, the process of gestation is absolutely breathtaking. The rate of growth of the fetus made possible by changes in the woman's hormones, immune function, and metabolism is astonishing, and the fact that this process is also beneficial to the mother is remarkable as well. The process of labor and delivery, one that seems to pose extreme physical danger, is the peak example of how women's bodies transform into a channel of power to safely deliver the baby and preserve themselves. The female body, biologically potent, supports this menstrual and reproductive process by being the more efficient extractor of micronutrients from food, by having the more developed immune system, by having a slightly slower metabolic system to retain nutrients for as long as possible before the elimination system gets to them, and by having more connections of nerve fibers between the 2 hemispheres of the brain. This biological precision ensures that a woman is sensitive to herself, her body, her community, and her environment, so she can make the best decisions for her well-being, as she is the one privileged by nature's design to carry the intense responsibility of creating the next generation of humans. And when not creating a human, all of her same systems support her in being a strong and attuned leader in her community and the world." End quote. What do you think about that? Nice, right? A little over the top for a biology textbook, I'd say, but a good description nonetheless. I think kind of the main point is that we live in a man's world where everything is more or less expected to be the same every single day. So we try to feel and act the same every day too. We think something's wrong with us when we can't crush our high-intensity workout one day the way we usually do, or we just don't feel like going out and socializing. We wonder why sometimes we have loose stools and others we have constipation problems. We wonder why sometimes it's easy to stick to a salad and celery sticks, but other days, not so much. Why some days we kill our to-do list and sleep like a baby, and other days it all seems too hard. Instead of thinking something's wrong with us or trying to suck it up and force ourselves to do something that feels really bad, once we understand what is natural for the phases of our cycle, we can use those hormonal peaks and valleys, ebbs and flows, to purposefully architect our days to capitalize on the strengths of that phase of our cycle. Instead of ignoring it or fighting against it, we can start working with our cycle to take advantage of the little superpower boosts that we get from the changes in our hormones. When we listen to our body and structure our days to line up with our current strengths, which change throughout the month, we can be more of who we want to be, more of the time, and it feels a lot easier. Sound good? Okay, so there are 4 phases to a monthly hormone cycle. After researching all of this, it kind of seems to me like there should be 5, but what do I know? So we'll go with the 4 she presents. This is all assuming the 28-day cycle, so you might need to do a little guessing or mental adjusting if that's not the case for you. When your hormones are balanced, they have a positive and predictable impact on your whole being and allow you to take advantage of your changing strengths throughout the month. While what is traditionally labeled as day 1 of your cycle is the day you start bleeding, it's actually the end of the cycle. This makes sense to me, so calling it day 1 has always seemed a little dumb, because it is. But I'll try to explain the cycle phases using both where it is in the cycle and what day number it would be to try to help lessen some of that confusion. Phase 1 is the follicular phase. It lasts 7 to 10 days and starts as soon as you stop bleeding. So phase 1 starts around what would be labeled day 5 to 7 of your menstrual cycle. All of your hormone levels start out pretty low at the beginning of the follicular phase, and the hypothalamus in your brain signals the pituitary gland to send FSH, or follicle stimulating hormone, to your ovaries to encourage some eggs to mature. FSH imbalances can be a cause of infertility. At menopause, FSH levels eventually rise to a high enough level that signals the ovaries to stop releasing eggs. It's one of the things that's sometimes measured in blood tests to determine menopause, which is completely silly and a waste of time. Okay, so the follicle is the fluid-filled sac that houses the egg. This phase of the cycle is named follicular for that follicle, the fluid-filled sac that houses the egg. Once the egg starts getting ready, estrogen levels begin to rise to start renewing the uterine lining, which is called the endometrium. So it's ready to nurture an egg. Your superpowers in this phase are creativity and planning. The follicular phase is all about a fresh start and openness to new things. It's a great time to set your goals and intentions and do something creative. You'll do your best brainstorming and planning during the follicular phase. As your estrogen rises, your working memory increases and you have a great ability to handle complex processing tasks. Save your most mentally challenging assignments for this week if you can. It's a good time to interview people, take courses, and chart your strategy. This is a good phase to start projects and strategically fill out your planner with things that need to get done to complete projects you're working on. Break your routines with your family and be more curious and playful. Look at your home with a fresh eye and plan any projects that need to get done. Your immune system is on high alert during this phase, which could be a problem if you have an autoimmune disease, or a blessing if you don't, because you're less likely to catch a cold or flu during the first half of your cycle. You'll feel best if you eat a lot of fresh, vibrant, light foods. If you like foods high in phytoestrogens like tempeh, miso, flax seeds, and organic soy, now is a good time to eat those, while your estrogen levels are still low. Lots of fresh vegetables, sprouted beans and seeds, and probiotic-rich foods are good for this phase. There is something called the estrobolome, specific good gut bacteria that help metabolize excess estrogen. Eating probiotic-rich foods during your follicular phase before your estrogen rises helps get your gut microbiome fed now so they're established and ready for your next phase when your estrogen levels will increase. Your metabolism is a little slower during the first half of your cycle, so you don't need as many calories now and will feel good with lighter meals. Since you're more open to new experiences during your follicular phase, it's a good time to try a new workout or exercise class. After a few days in this phase, you'll be ready for more hardcore workouts, so the world's your oyster here, and it could be a good time to work on some conditioning. Phase 2 of the cycle is the ovulatory phase, which is only 3 to 4 days long. This will be somewhere around days 12 to 16 of the cycle or so, in the middle, approximately 7 to 10 days after you stop bleeding. There is a dramatic rise in estrogen followed by a rise in luteinizing hormone, or LH, that stimulates one ovarian follicle with an egg inside to mature fully and be released into one of the fallopian tubes. Abnormal luteinizing hormone levels are associated with infertility and PCOS. The egg is then ready to be cared for in the uterus with its new nourishing lining and protective immune cells that stand guard there. There is also a sharp surge and then decline of testosterone during this phase. Testosterone, in the right amounts of course, does a lot of good things for women. It's most famously thought of as increasing sex drive, which it does, and it makes sense to have your body encourage that during this phase when you're most likely to get pregnant. But it also helps build muscle and gives you energy and all kinds of other good things. If you've ever tried to predict when you're ovulating because you wanted to get pregnant, you know that you can recognize this phase by the increase in your basal body temperature and the presence of cervical mucus too. Your superpowers during this phase are communication, collaboration, and energy. The ovulatory phase is a time of feeling social and communicative. Your verbal and social centers of the brain are stimulated by the hormones of the ovulatory phase, so it's a great time to plan social interactions or important conversations. This is the best time to connect with your community and enjoy being magnetic. This is when you want to be seen. Socialize, pitch your ideas, schedule meetings and presentations. Plan a fun date, host a party. High estrogen here will boost your mental sharpness and help you convey your thoughts and opinions most clearly. You'll also be more receptive to the thoughts and opinions of others. Work on your marketing or messaging during this phase, or post a video of yourself giving a lesson or a talk. Plan a get-together or event with family, or take a kid out for a one-on-one dinner. lead a family council, or start a Nerf war. High estrogen levels in this phase boost your mood and keep your energy levels high. If estrogen levels get too high, you may experience some acne. You probably know that your basal body temperature increases at ovulation, so you might enjoy more raw foods during this phase. Lots of raw vegetables and fruits are good in this phase. Extra glutathione in this phase will help your liver metabolize the extra estrogen. You can take it as a supplement or eat foods that boost glutathione like spinach, broccoli, cauliflower, and citrus fruits. During your ovulatory phase, your estrogen and testosterone levels are at their highest, giving you lots of energy. This is the best time to crush an intense workout and a good time to join a group fitness class, as you're more likely to feel social. If you enjoy heavy weights, it's a good time to take advantage of the power you get from extra testosterone during this cycle. I think it's good to take a pause to let this all sink in. It can be hard to remember what your superpowers are during which phase of your cycle and what things are best to do then. So I made you a little PDF that you can download for free if you want to. Just keep it handy and be like, what is it again? What's my superpower during this cycle again? You can just pop open that PDF and be like, oh yeah, I remember now. So if you want to get that, you can head on over to healthcourage.ck.page/cycle, but I'll just put a link in the show notes. That'll be easier. Click that link. You can download that free PDF and pull it up if you've forgotten what your superpower is during which phase of your cycle. It's also a good way to just help you be more aware of what's going on throughout the month. And I think there's power in that too. Let your brain digest the information. Obviously, you're not going to turn your whole life upside down overnight for the sake of living in sync with your changing hormones. But I do think it's valuable to know what's going on with your body and how it might be influencing how you feel. While men are ruled by circadian rhythms only, we are ruled by both circadian rhythms and also these infradian rhythms. Infradian means longer than a day, so we have a bonus, natural, and predictable 28-day rhythm that influences how we feel. Take a week to think about what we've learned so far about our extra abilities during the first half of our cycle, and if there's anything small you can implement that might make your life a little bit easier. Then next week we'll finish up with the second half of our cycle. Until then, don't be normal. Thank you so much for tuning into the Health Courage Collective podcast. I am truly honored that you have paid me the enormous compliment of your time and attention. I would be so grateful if you would share this podcast with someone you know and subscribe so you never miss an episode. This podcast is for entertainment and information purposes only. Statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Christina Hackett and producers, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse events by use of information contained herein. If you think you have a medical problem, consult a licensed physician.